in special partnership with and brought to you by our friends at FLYN. Today on Soulfront, where we explore personal and workforce transformation, we have Lilley, who is the Interim Executive Director of the Edmonton Downtown Business Association. It aims to support, connect, and enrich Edmonton's downtown community. Nick has a background in education and business development, and as the past director of the University of Alberta Executive Education Program, he has a passion for personal and organizational growth. Today, we wanted to explore the theme of the growth mindset and why it's so important during these difficult times. So, without further ado, let's get into the show. Well, Nick, welcome to the show. To start off, a little bit about you. You're the Interim Executive Director at Edmonton Downtown Business Association, which aims to support, connect, enrich Edmonton's downtown community. You have a background in education, business development, and as the past director of the University of Alberta Executive Education Program, you have a passion for personal and organizational growth. Today, what we'll do is we're going to explore the theme of growth mindset. And that originates from Carol Dweck's 2007 book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. And I think it's going to be a good topic for people who are struggling right now with the pandemic, but also for businesses and leaders who want to adopt kind of a more positive framing for the future. So first off, just thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Scott. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Like, to put it like in a simple way, like the growth mindset says that, intelligence can be developed versus a fixed mindset where intelligence doesn't change. Either you have it or you don't. A growth mindset embraces challenges, obstacles, effort, criticism, and the success of others, while that fixed mindset tries to avoid these things. So like the idea is adopting a growth mindset can unleash people and businesses' potential to achieve. So that's kind of like a broad overview. But Nick, like, what does the growth mindset mean to you?
Well, I think you hit it on the head in terms of sort of the definition. And I, really stumbled across Carol Dweck's book years ago, and just sort of it hit home for me in so many respects that there was this predominant notion of a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And I think, you could argue that, there's a little bit of both in different situations for different individuals. But, in coming into, a lot of my experiences as a teacher, which was sort of my earlier career, you could really see that in so many different respects where, students who may have been very talented and intelligent in some areas, as they grew into different challenges, their response really went to whether they thought that they could learn more, or if they ran into challenges, that sort of put them on their heels. And the response, is a lot of what Carol Dweck outlined in all this research is that when you bump into challenges with a fixed mindset, you look to blame other people, or you avoid challenges altogether, because at the core, you're really looking to make yourself look good, because you truly believe that who you are and what you got is what you got, and you can't necessarily develop. Whereas on the growth mindset side, you'd see students in particular who, maybe came into a challenge or something, even within their coursework, and were maybe not knocking it out of the park in a respect, but had this sort of approach where they're just a sponge and they're looking to learn and develop and really believe that they could. And so looking at challenges just as an opportunity to improve, in fact, kind of embracing challenges and sort of, rubbing your hands together and going, okay, what are we getting into? And thriving in those types of circumstances. But I think for me, a lot of it ties back to, the way people respond with effort. And if you have a growth mindset, the thing that a lot of people would look to do is that effort is, and your perseverance are the way in which you can continue to develop. In a fixed mindset, I think as the research sort of suggests, and sort of the experiences I've come across, effort is almost like a bad thing. If I have to try, then I must not be smart, right? Wherein effort really is that road to development and persevering in your learning experience, hopefully pushes you to a whole nother level if you adhere to the growth mindset. So
Yeah,
those
yeah,
are some of the pieces that matter, from my perspective.
for sure. And like, I've got this quote that talks to a lot of things that you're just saying, and it's from Carol Dweck, and she says that I've seen so many people with this one consuming goal of proving themselves, whether it's in the classrooms, in their careers, in their relationships. And every situation calls to a confirmation of their intelligence, their personality, or their character. Every situation is evaluated. Like, will I succeed or fail? Will I look smart or dumb? Will I be accepted or rejected? Will I feel like a winner or a loser? And like, I think that when I look at the uncertainty of the 2020 pandemic, it shows how fear can be brought on by these fixed mindset questions like, will I succeed, fail, smart, dumb, accepted, rejected, winner, loser? And I see the growth mindset almost as a way to counteract or overcome this fear. Nick, like, what do you believe why do you believe the growth mindset is important? What do you think its true value is?
Yeah, well, I think you could even step back before pre-COVID, and look at the work environment in some respect and say how commonly we're put in these positions where a lot of our career success or even compensation, whatever it is, hinges on our ability to look good or, to succeed in some ways. And there's a lot of, I think, different ways to succeed. But if you go through life on the basis that you are static in your intelligence and skills, then, if you come across a challenge where you're not sure if you're going to be able to succeed, you're going to shy away from that, right? Whereas in a growth mindset, those new challenges, maybe those opportunities to rise to a whole nother level. And so I think that's where you start to see people, either fall back and miss out on those opportunities for growth or lean into them. And if you take that into the COVID dynamic, I think what we really coming into is there are a lot of challenges that are unseen, unknown to people right now. And if you were successful in your current role or sort of your career to date on the basis of your current talents and skills, those may not be what you need in this type of new environment. And the fact that there's new things coming at us every day kind of requires that we be continuously learning, or at least that's where the opportunity for leadership or the growth through this really is in leaning into those new challenges, believing that you can advance your own skills and abilities and find a way to succeed in this new normal. So I think it's so relevant right now, just on the basis of all this change that we're experiencing. And yet not to say that, that change wasn't there beforehand, but I think it's only been accelerated by COVID and likely to kind of continue on that sort of trajectory into the future.
Yeah. Like, having said that, the growth mindset, I don't know if it's easy. Like, I think that we all have like our good days and bad days, times where everything seems to be kind of going our way, and then other times when things seem to be falling apart. In many ways, like, adopting the growth mindset can be thought of as a journey, I think. When did you start adopting this growth mindset for yourself?
Yeah, well, it's tough to pin down a specific point, but I would say you're 100% right. This is not as easy as it sounds. You read the book and you go, oh, okay, it's very clearly in one of these two camps, and I'd probably love to be this in the growth mindset. But I think every day is this ongoing battle. Some of us feel in relation to where we think we're at and whether we have opportunity to kind of grow. I know for myself personally, particularly in a professional context, it really has sort of pushed me to think, okay, I think I've been quite successful in a lot of the different things I've done, but come up against new challenges that certainly didn't see any of that coming. And, you can either kind of fall back and sort of go, oh my goodness, the sky is falling and go down a bit of a negative path, or shy away from criticism or the opportunity to learn in some respect. Or you can really embrace the fact to think that this is what's in front of you, and that there's probably great things you can learn from this experience and move forward. I think it was even more clear to me, particularly in the role that I was undertaking at Executive Education at the University of Alberta, wherein we had the pleasure of working with incredible business leaders who spent a lot of money to come there and to learn from sort of the best in terms of the instruction. But even within that, even having made that commitment to show up in a course and having paid that money, and maybe some were just sort of told to be there, but a lot of them, I think, embraced the notion I want to learn. There's that moment when you're presented with the fact that there is more to learn here, and to learn, you probably need to be vulnerable. You need to be open to criticism or thinking about something in a new way. And I can say, I've done a lot of these types of educational experiences, and I find that tension all the time that, do I put myself out there and sort of suggesting that maybe I don't have all the talent or all the skills, and I might look a little bit silly in putting myself on the line. And yet I would suggest that the growth mindset really drives you towards that opportunity to learn and overcoming, your fears and the prospect of failure. So I think, failure can land in very small ways, shapes, and forms, but as something as simple as, engaging fully in a learning experience is, I think, where some individuals, and certainly for myself, you can almost feel that tension between falling back into a fixed mindset and, reverting from any potential criticism or new ideas to, on the flip side, embracing them and taking that full opportunity, come what may.
Yeah, you talked about at Exec Ed how, you had these different leaders, different companies that were trying to thinking about growth mindset, and you recognize that vulnerability is kind of one of those ways to kind of just drop the facade or barriers to kind of move forward and be more comfortable to start thinking differently or in a different way. Carol Dweck, when she did her work with Microsoft and other companies, she said there's 5 ways to grow a true growth mindset. She said, one was to look for opportunities. The second was to become comfortable with failure. So that's kind of like something you just said there. The third was to practice self-compassion. The fourth was to broaden your talent. And then the last was to set moonshot goals. When you were at Executive Education, were those some of the things that you talked about? How did you get folks to be in that growth mindset?
Yeah, and we had the pleasure of working with such incredible instructional teams, that we would sort of bring to the table based on the circumstance. But I think at the core, there was a lot of key facets to any type of the education we were doing there, particularly with executives, I think, who have risen to success in a lot of different ways and really have learned to lean into their strengths. But there's a great quote from John Maxwell, who's sort of a leadership guru. He says, to grow yourself, you got to know yourself. And so this idea of self-awareness, that prospectively you do have some gaps, you certainly have strengths that you can build on, but some certainly opportunities for growth. Until you appreciate and understand that and are willing to be honest with that, how could you possibly go beyond that and improve in any way? So if you can't get past the notion that you have the capacity to grow and develop, if you truly believe you're static in your making and your intelligence or skills can't be developed, I think you're going to struggle in any of those types of circumstances. So I think there had to be that core realization, and then the recognizing that there's work to do, and it's hard work. It's putting yourself out there and being honest with where you need to improve and what that takes. But I think, as you mentioned, this notion of a goal becomes really important, wherein if you're just standing back and letting things hit you on a daily basis, that's a tough way to live, because it's hard to determine the priorities by which you respond to those things, or the efforts or the time and investment that you put towards any one thing, if you're not somewhat at least clear on where you're trying to go. And so I think, we commonly would couple these types of development opportunities, with a company's strategic plan, right? Wherein we're doing this for a reason. It's because we want to achieve this. So any of this development really should be in that sort of vein. And you as an individual or as a leader within your organization, how can you continue to embrace this opportunity and change, grow in such a way that you can be even more effective towards that goal? So a lot of the work there really went to that notion. I think the ones who have been most successful, particularly through this time with COVID, would be, I think, those ones who are learning a lot, but also keeping sort of a clear purpose and then a future orientation in mind about where we're going to take this forward and responding accordingly.
Yeah, like one big part of the growth mindset is effort. And you talked about that. And sometimes there's this misconception that the growth mindset is only about effort. And I think recognizing effort is a part of it, but it's also results. Like in a growth mindset, outcomes are supposed to matter. Cultivating the mindset means learning from success and failure, continuing to revise, upgrade, and improve. So over time, your outcomes get better. Can you point to an example, whether it's personal or business, where you've seen growth mindset success?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to sort of an institutional example. It's one of the best ones that I think has been recognized of late. Really Microsoft. And, I think we can try and take this example and bring it back to your own organization in some way. But Satya Nadella, new CEO, I think Microsoft, and this is sort of established in the literature, had been sort of in this case where risen to this well-established level within industry and doing a lot of impressive things, but then also facing a ton of change. And I think what was sort of established, or at least recognized by Nadella as in coming in, was that they're a bit of a culture of know-it-alls. And so if you believe that, you've got this handled and you don't need to think beyond sort of your scope of where you're at today, or that the answers will come because we got the right people and that's as good as we're going to get. That is challenging, particularly in the context of a rapidly changing industry, never mind just everyday life, within technology that's continuing to move along. So Nadella's sort of point in being quite intentional around with the growth mindset and institutionalizing that in a lot of ways was to move from that culture of know-it-alls to a culture of learn-it-alls. And so a lot of very management systems, the training and development that they were doing to try and institutionalize that sort of notion. But, I think for that to be successful, particularly in an organization that big, you really got to bring some intention to it. And I think, the results have sort of spoken for themselves there in a lot of ways. Not to say that was the only thing, but, with that sort of mindset increasingly embedded, it hopefully sets them up for success in a grander scheme as we continue to see all these changes come our way within the economy and everything at large.
Yeah. Like talking about success and, trying to figure out success. Recently, the Downtown Business Association came out with a report, and that is a resilient downtown, focused on 4 key areas. And, one was fostering innovation. Second is enhancing inclusivity. Third, strengthening cultural vitality. And then the fourth one was developing interconnectivity. Now, looking at the report, I think the ideas and the recommendations in the report are great. But how do you make progress? How do you keep that growth mindset in such difficult times? What is it the community is trying to do?
Yeah, and it's an interesting conversation we're having right now, I think, on a community level, because, community is really a buildup of all these different stakeholders who have a vested interest and maybe some shared values within the area. And I think we as a downtown, we're in a very different place, even just a few months ago. I think a lot of momentum being built because a lot of, we got this shiny new arena. The Oilers are on a bit of a roll heading into the playoffs. Lots of investment and even some of the infrastructure, is in motion towards being sort of this whole another level. COVID hits, and obviously downtowns are probably disproportionately affected in that when everyone needs to now work from home, this community that I think is known for its vibrancy, for its cultural vitality, and just this hub of culture and connectivity, we suddenly were forced to lose that on the basis of COVID, right? Yeah. Now, coming out of that, it's still a lot of lingering questions. We still have incredible businesses down here, people living down here, a huge base of residents that are looking to engage and valuing those community connections. And so when we undertook this report, and it was done by an MBA student researcher who did a whole bunch of engagement with different stakeholders and a lot of literature review to inform it, we did find these kind of 4 core drivers to enhance resiliency. So our ability to recover in the face of stress. And so how we foster that at community level is quite tricky because, it's different than, you or I just sort of saying, we're going to, take some action to adopt a growth mindset, even, if we feel that struggle of the fixed mindset. It's a little harder even to then incorporate that at an organizational level, right? And get people's buy-in towards that. Now, at a community level, where we have such a diverse base of groups and individuals here downtown, for us to come together on something is not an easy task, but yet I think it's an even more important task. So these 4 areas, I think, give us some focus in terms of if we can collaborate, on those 4 areas effectively and bring our best minds towards it. Not to say that we'll have the answers right off the hop, but that if we're collectively working on these areas, solutions can hopefully emerge, that we can embrace this challenge with a growth mindset and continue to believe that we'll come out of this stronger. Yeah. Not going to be easy by any means, right? But, we can dive into any one of those 4 if you like. And that's part of what we're going to be doing at the DBA over the next few months in particular, is sort of drilling down into each of those 4 areas, be it enhancing inclusion, fostering innovation, developing interconnectivity, or strengthening cultural vitality, and putting some tangible action with partners together to try and foster that.
Yeah, you know what? I thought that, in the report, one of the great things was you didn't shy away. You asked some of the tough questions, like, how do you support your community when your business is also suffering? Or how do you generate revenue when your business is essentially reliant on human contact? So you dug in there. What are some of the key learnings you found from the downtown business community's response through going through the report?
Yeah, well, it's been frankly pretty inspiring to be down here right now, just because of, I think, a lot of organizations who really, whether they're saying it or not, really embrace that growth mindset, wherein, we're playing in a whole different game, so to speak. And it's not, a game is maybe not the right word, but, a business like X Therapy, who's mentioned in the report, which is a fitness studio. Well, how do you respond when suddenly you can't have people within it? And yet to turn on their heel as a small business, make the investment to go online with different classes, to rent out some of their equipment to people at home. And then as sort of, day by day, we're seeing new opportunities emerge within the health regulations. They went and knocked out a wall and made more space so that they could allow for greater social distancing on site. I think everyone has just appreciated how important it is to foster that sense of safety and consumer confidence down here. And yet, really, I think you could very easily just stop and go, I guess I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait and see and hope for the best. And yet I'm not seeing that, Arlie, in any cases. I'm seeing these businesses really rise to the occasion and continue to reach out customers, but also to each other, right? And thinking about how collectively we can work together in different ways. And a good example of that was this Tech Cares sort of initiative right off the hop, where some of these companies who by way of their business model already, certainly had challenges, but were maybe in a little bit better state. Were making contributions to the food bank, and were, their own people who were struggling in their own right, going beyond sort of thinking about just themselves in this and looking to the broader community. Because with COVID, we are all in it together. Any vulnerability we have as a community level could broadly affect everybody else, and the ability to reopen and continue to gain momentum. And so we really need to be thinking about our at-risk communities here in the downtown, and recognizing they are very much part of our communities. We need to be thinking about like our artist community, which I think you could say has been disproportionately affected just on the basis of not being able to do very much, even amidst that creativity. So I think there's been so many of these different cases of businesses sort of starting to band together and really thinking about different initiatives that not only benefit themselves, but think about the community and how they can bring everybody along. So that growth mindset to me has really been one of the key reasons where we're seeing some success and some momentum starting to build.
Yeah, like right now, the Downtown Business Association, you're hosting Downtown Live, and Downtown Live, it's a summer series of live performances at venues downtown, I think till the end of September. I think there's over 40 micro events with indie singers, opera in the River Valley, Indigenous performances, music, theater, dance, arts, and it's all unique downtown locations. So when I think of Downtown Live, it looks like a kind of a perfect example of trying to be creative and to support the downtown. Like, how have you used elements of the growth mindset to pull that off?
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning. I know I'm shamelessly promoting it in behind me here, but the reality for us is in coming out of this report, we talk about cultural vitality. People need to care about a place in order to invest and put their efforts towards making it succeed through challenging times. And the arts and culture community in particular is one who really does foster that sense of connection and the culture of our downtown in a whole. And to see them not being able to do the things that they normally do, like our festivals, and we're known as a festival city, and yet not being able to do that this summer in the big form has been really unfortunate. And yet we felt like there might be an opportunity to sort of look at these report findings and do something that really works in that light, and needing to be very, very careful around safety. These micro events really do, support directly by the DBA artists in performing their craft, but doing so on business premises, so it can be controlled for the amount of people and social distancing. So it's a lot of those, fun activities on a patio or in a parking lot or in a park type of thing. And the response we've gotten here has just been incredible. Not only have these been great performances, but people who are hearing about it, coming out and really looking at this as just a showcase of what's going right. From the view that people are maintaining safe distance, wearing masks, in proximity, that we can still find creative ways to drive things to support this notion of cultural vitality, which we have recognized is so essential to our community's resiliency. So it's been a fun ride. It was a lot of work because this was all sort of new, but that effort, that leaning into the challenge, I think from the team here and those that we've engaged has really been a great example of our downtown community demonstrating a growth mindset.
Yeah, and thanks for doing that, because I think it's trying to show people how they can look at the new normal and just build off of different examples of trying to be creative and bring people together in a responsible way, right? And I think that's a part of it. People are they have the fear, but how do you show them that you can do it, but you just have to be a little bit more creative. So thanks for that. Like I read an article on how executives can instill this idea of the growth mindset, and it listed leaders considering like not worrying about their own status, instilling and promoting courage in their organization, promoting personal growth and hiring from it within. And these are examples of cultural norms, but like what would you say are some of the best practices you can see when adopting a growth mindset?
Yeah. Well, I'll look at it firstly maybe from an individual lens, and I think when each and every one of us are going to have these moments where we are torn, and that notion of fixed mindset versus growth mindset, like we've talked about, is sort of this ongoing battle that we all kind of face in some respect. I think reflection is such an important piece in learning, right? From the view that every day we're out there giving our all in different ways, but reflecting on what we're learning, and then trying to tie that to what we're trying to achieve. So the notion of goal planning, or at least having a vision in a sense for where you're going through this time, and knowing you're going to face punches from all directions, particularly right now, reflecting on what is working, what's not, and trying to apply those in a greater sense, I think is a great and easier step to do. It requires, that, diligence and perseverance, but I think the results have sort of spoken for themselves in the research there. On a community level, yeah, I think, you're hearing so much right now around coaching, and coaching being, something that maybe in the past had been reserved for only people at the CEO level. But really, I think this whole notion of coaching as leaders within our organizations, and not being the ones to tell people what to do, but having conversations that give people insight around what they are doing, what they're trying to achieve, so that they come up with their own solutions, right? And that enables people to grow. I think it gives them more accountability on their own right to develop, towards some specific goals. But some of that intentional work around coaching, it seems like it is a great format that can be fairly easily adopted, formally, informally within businesses. And so I think those are different pieces. I think organizations on a whole, the ones that have really embraced this notion, they're going deep into their sort of systems and their habits within organizations that go to performance development. You're not necessarily just being compensated on the basis of how exactly you did at this point in time. It's in consideration to your growth, and always having some dimension of development within that. So, it's not just we're working for this one moment in time. Good indicators that suggest we're making progress is key, I think, within developing that growth mindset. But it's not a yes or no sort of scenario wherein I'm good or I'm not. It's I'm a work in progress, and I'm going to keep on working towards this. One, because it's good for me. Two, because it's in line with where the company and the organization needs to go. And so that requires, I think, a little bit of a rethink in a lot of the way that some of the organizations are structured. And I think there are some, small steps towards that. And it can start small in any given area, with a conversation that a manager has with one of their employees, and just reframing that slightly. And then I think the big part on the end is how we celebrate that type of mindset when we see it in place. For those who are really engaging and celebrating, successes that they've accomplished through effort and through learning. As an individual in an organization, we're all taking notes, particularly on how the people at the top are incenting and supporting people. And so that notion of progress and development, if that's sort of front and center within the culture that you have, I think, one, you're going to see gains in a hurry, people moving towards this. Two, I think in the long term, and even right now within COVID, that's a recipe for success amidst, this time of uncertainty and change.
Yeah, just, you know what, Nick, thanks so much for your time. Just to wrap up here, just one question I always ask is, how do we get buy-in around these types of ideas? How do we get a buy-in around adopting a growth mindset from leadership? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think, in some respects, it's looking for those success stories, right? And yet, even before we get there, I think people need the building blocks before they can play in some respects. And so if you're someone who has sort of embraced, this mindset, sees the value of it, sharing this, and even, the book by Carol Dweck is sort of the Bible when it comes to growth mindset, and is relevant to parents, to businesses, to anybody in a lot of respect. But, getting this on the table, on the agenda, and part of the conversation, I think makes it something that goes beyond just something we heard to something we are really considering and thinking through, right? And so, particularly right now, where I think a lot of companies are needing to think differently, act differently amidst all this change, and the forthcoming notion that we're going to be in a more digitized environment, which requires all kinds of different skill sets. I think the more we're talking about how we're developing our people and our team in light of those new circumstances and ongoing trends, is really what's going to force people to come to terms with what the strategies are that worked for them within their organizations or for themselves personally. So, I think these types of conversations are really important, because if we all sort of share our experiences, we only sort of put ourselves out there as being maybe not perfect beings, that where our intelligence and our skills are as they are. I think in my mind, if we kind of can bring that lens to any conversation about, okay, well, how might we grow through this opportunity, and continue to look at things from a different lens, and feel that we can succeed if we do put the effort and persevere. That to me starts to change the conversation in so many different ways. So whether you're at the top of an organization or not, I think you can have an impact in really sort of driving the ideas and principles of the growth mindset within your daily conversations and actions.
Well, you know what, Nick, thanks so much for taking the time to bring this conversation up and help me dive deep into the growth mindset. I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book, so I'd recommend it to anyone. And just again, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott. I loved it.
Thank you for your support. Please remember to click subscribe so we can bring you more remarkable interviews with extraordinary leaders.